Hi, students. This video is to talk to you a little bit about giving the context of quotations. Um, Many times in your essays, um, I've written that you needed to give more context for the quotation you were citing, and I want to make sure you know what I mean when I say that. So one thing we've talked about in class and we've practiced a lot is making a quotation sandwich. So if you remember, whenever you use a quotation to support one of your points in an essay, you don't want to you shouldn't just stick the quote in without any kind of lead in or without any kind of explanation. So a quotation sandwich, just like you most of the time, if you feel like some turkey, you're not just going to cram some turkey in your mouth. Maybe you do that sometimes, but usually we get some good bread, we get some mayonnaise or mustard, maybe some lettuce, tomato, and onion, and we make a sandwich with that turkey because that really brings out the turkey's flavor. It's much more pleasurable eating experience. Same thing with a quotation. You don't want to just stick it into your essay without any kind of dressing. So when we talk about a quotation sandwich, we talk about the top piece of bread being the signal phrase leading into the quotation to guide your reader from your voice to the voice from the text. And we talk about a bottom piece of bread that after, you give the quote, you might explain how the quote relates to whatever point you're making in that section. So in addition to those two pieces of bread, those sort of bare minimum pieces of bread that need to be there, there are a few other things you need to do to really make your quotation pop and be powerful and be effective in helping you make your argument. So one of them is to remember to give the context of quotations. So what I have here is a example from one of your essays. Somebody is writing about sorry to bother you, and they're doing a really good job of talking about the power and peril of the code switching he does. And I just want to focus on this top example first. So she wrote, at first, Cassius succeeds and makes a good amount of money, but then he starts to become selfish and does not think about his friends and girlfriends who are protesting the company that Cassius Green is working for. Quote, you are crossing the picket line. I cannot ride with you. So obviously, one problem here is that it's a bald quote. It's what we call a bald or dropped or floating quotation. And this is the biggest mistake you can make with quotation integration. So that's really easy to fix. So all she needs here is some kind of signal phrase. His girlfriend tells him, you are crossing the picket line. I cannot ride with you. His girlfriend ends their relationship because Cassius is being selfish and the only thing that he cares about is his job. So now we've got kind of the top piece of bread. We've got the lead into the quote now. This is what I mean when I talk about a signal phrase. And after the quotation, she has a good explanation as to what point she's trying to make with this quote. She's trying to show how the code switching doesn't only help Cassius, but it puts him in peril because it divides him from the people he cares about. But I still feel like one thing that is missing here, and I see this a lot in your essays, is a little bit more information about the context of this quote, about why she's so upset about his code switching and why she's so incapable of continuing to be his girlfriend after he code switches. So often, and that doesn't take that much more work. It's always tricky when you're writing about a movie or a book or an essay that we've all read together, to know how much you need to summarize it. In this case, I think you just need to set up the quote a little bit more, give a few more details about the situation in which it appears, to really make your quotation be super effective. And that's what I mean when I talk about the context of the quote. So I'm going to show you what I did here. At first, Cassius succeeds and makes a good amount of money, but then he starts to become selfish and does not think about his friends and girlfriend. And I should say here that a lot of the time, giving the context of a quote is just slowing down for a second and giving like 2 or 3 sentences about the context. So that's what I did here. His girlfriend, Detroit, and his other friends are protesting Regalview because it doesn't treat its workers well, and it seems to be a shell company for Worry Free, a company that sells slaves. They form a picket line outside the Regalview offices, and Cassius walks past the picket line to continue his work as a power caller. Detroit finally tells him, "You are crossing the picket line. I cannot ride with you." So do you see how just giving a little bit more about the context, explaining the context just a little bit more, makes that quote more effective, sort of makes it more powerful, and it doesn't take that much work. It's often just 1 or 2 sentences. Also, a big part of what I did is I explained the picket line she refers to in the quote. So sometimes somebody uses a quote with he or she or it, and the quote isn't set up in a way that we know to whom the she, he, or it is referring to. So you always want to look for those things inside the quote. Will the people know, will the reader know what this picket line is she's talking about? Will the reader know who the she is in the quote? So that's another really important thing giving the context of a quote does. It clarifies what the quote is actually saying. So now when we read this quote, we know the picket line she's talking about because we prepared our reader, we know because the writer prepared us for it. His girlfriend ends their relationship because Cassius is being selfish and the only thing that he cares about is his job. So that's what I mean when I talk about the context of quotations. As you work on your final essay exam tonight or on your revision of essay 2, you might practice giving a little bit more context for your quotations.